This video covers heirloom seeds that are disappearing right now, the reasons behind it, and exactly what you should be buying before the shelves go bare again. Back in the 1800s, American gardeners could choose from roughly 7,000 varieties of apples, and today fewer than 100 of those are sold anywhere commercially. That collapse did not stop with apples. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why the same quiet erosion is happening right now to the heirloom and open-pollinated seeds in your local garden center, beginning with a single spring in 2020 that exposed something about our global food supply. Most gardeners have never been told directly. March and April of 2020 produced something that had no precedent in the modern history of home gardening in this country. Seed companies ran out of stock, not on one or two popular items, but across entire catalogs, and the names going empty were not small operations. Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds, Burpee, Johnny's Selected Seeds, Territorial Seed Company. These are the companies that serious gardeners have relied on for decades. Burpee alone had been selling seeds in America since 1876, and in those weeks they reported sales increases somewhere between 300 and 500%. By the time the dust settled, the National Gardening Association counted 18.3 million new gardeners who had taken up the hobby in the United States that year alone. The easy explanation, the one most people landed on, was that the pandemic sent people home with nothing to do, and that is partly where the story begins. What that explanation gets wrong, though, is the motivation. Those 18 million people were not bored hobbyists filling an afternoon. They looked at empty grocery store shelves for the first time in their adult lives and felt something closer to alarm, which meant the seeds they bought were not a pastime purchase, they were a preparation. This instinct echoed the Victory Garden movement during World War II, when Americans grew food out of necessity rather than hobby. And that instinct pulled back a curtain nobody had thought to look behind, which is how thin the seed supply chain actually turns out to be. No backup inventory existed. When demand climbed, the shelves cleared, and certain varieties never returned to full availability after that. Why some varieties never come back is the part of this story most people stop short of hearing, and it lives inside a decade of corporate decisions in the seed industry that I want to walk you through. Before that, though, you need a picture of how much genetic variety has already been lost, because without it, the corporate story lands softer than it should. 75% of plant genetic diversity vanished over the course of the 20th century, a figure both the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization and the USDA put into their records, and it represents 3 out of every 4 distinct varieties that grew in gardens and fields when your grandparents were alive, gone within a single lifetime. The scale of this loss is so significant that institutions like the Svalbard Global Seed Vault in Norway now serve as a backup for the world's remaining crop diversity. The mechanism behind that loss generated no headlines. No disaster caused it. No single decision erased it. Just the steady commercial pressure to produce food that behaved uniformly, tomatoes that ripened on the same schedule, traveled without damage, and looked identical side by side on a supermarket shelf. Those requirements are real and practical, and the plant breeders who met them did exactly what they were asked to do. The cost spread quietly across decades was that thousands of varieties adapted to particular soils, particular climates, and particular regional growing conditions stopped being planted by anyone, which meant nobody saved their seeds, and one after another they stopped existing. The apple numbers carry the clearest version of this story. 7,000 varieties moved through commercial trade in the 1800s, and fewer than 100 survive in commercial form today. Tomatoes, beans, corn, and lettuce followed the same path. Families grew some of those lost varieties for 100 years or more, varieties with names and documented histories and flavors nobody alive has tasted, and they are simply not recoverable. Once a variety disappears with no saved seed to restart it, no amount of money or research brings it back, and that irreversibility is exactly what makes the corporate consolidation of the seed industry worth understanding in full. Between 2016 and 2018, 3 of the largest mergers in the history of agriculture closed in quick succession. Bayer purchased Monsanto for $63 billion. ChemChina purchased Syngenta for roughly $43 billion, and the agricultural divisions of Dow and DuPont combined before spinning off as Corteva Agriscience in 2019. The result of those 3 deals was that 4 companies, Bayer, Corteva, Syngenta, and BASF, now control an estimated 50 to 60% of the global commercial seed market. Half of the world's seed supply runs through 4 boardrooms, and none of those boardrooms are focused on your backyard. Their breeding programs chase volume, specifically the F1 hybrid varieties that can move at scale to industrial farming operations, and seeds that cannot justify a commercial program get less investment, then less shelf space, then no shelf space at all. The loss accumulates quietly, variety by variety, season by season. There is one more piece of this that most gardeners have never encountered. In 1980, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in a case called Diamond versus Chakrabarty that living organisms could be patented, and that ruling opened the door to seed patents. Many hybrid varieties on garden center shelves today carry legal protection that prohibits saving their seeds for replanting, which means buying them once is not enough. Gardeners who plant patented varieties write that check again every single year. Heirloom seeds operate on entirely different terms. Open-pollinated, typically more than 50 years old, owned by nobody. They can be grown, saved at the end of the season, and replanted the following year at no additional cost, carrying the same variety, the same flavor profile, the same genetics forward indefinitely. That's the practical case for buying them now, while solid options are still on the shelf. Certain varieties disappear from catalogs faster than others, and the mortgage lifter tomato sits near the top of that list. M.C. Gilkey, a man his neighbors called Radiator Charlie, bred this variety through years of patient crossbreeding work in the 1930s and sold enough plants from his garden to pay off his mortgage entirely, which is where the name came from. A large, meaty, low-acid tomato with a flavor no commercial grower bothers to cultivate. It sells out regularly at every major heirloom seed retailer, and getting your hands on it usually means ordering early. Dragon tongue beans and rattlesnake pole beans move nearly as fast, and glass gem corn, the multicolored variety whose kernels look almost too beautiful to be a food crop, runs out of stock every season as well. Glass gem can be ground into cornmeal or popped, but its significance runs deeper than its uses because it connects directly to Native American agricultural traditions that nearly disappeared entirely before seed preservationists and organizations like Native Seeds Search intervened. For gardeners drawn to growing their own grain crops, amaranth and quinoa have both seen climbing demand and are worth adding before that demand catches up with supply. Two names anchor the heirloom sourcing world: Seed Savers Exchange, a nonprofit based in Decorah, Iowa, maintains a collection of around 20,000 heirloom varieties and operates on the principle that seeds belong to everyone. Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds in Mansfield, Missouri, started in 1998 when Jer Gettle was 17 years old and now offers more than 1,400 varieties each year in their catalog. Southern Exposure Seed Exchange and Fedco Seeds round out the group of organizations whose reason for existing is specifically to keep these varieties in circulation rather than to move product at the highest margin. Every one of them has catalogs open right now, and the seeds worth having are available today. But history gave a clear demonstration in 2020 of how fast that changes when enough people realize at the same moment that they need to be growing their own food. 7,000 apple varieties in the 1800s, and fewer than 100 left in commercial form today. That number carries the whole story inside it. The varieties that vanished did not disappear because anyone decided they lacked worth. They disappeared because no one made a deliberate decision to hold on to them, and the default path, whenever no one is actively paying attention, runs straight toward whatever is most uniform and most profitable for the biggest buyers in any system. Planting heirloom varieties, saving seeds at the end of a season, passing them to a neighbor or a grandchild, these are choices that run against that default, and they are how diversity survives. Not in corporate vaults or government programs alone, but in the hands of gardeners who never stopped growing the old varieties because those varieties were worth growing. If a variety has been living in your family for years, something your grandmother kept going, or something you cannot find in any current catalog, put it in the comments. That knowledge belongs to everyone who might be looking for it, and the people watching this are exactly the ones most likely to have it. Take care of your garden. It matters more than most people have been told.